Abhisara The Tryst. This is a poem in which we will find that there is a meeting between people from two different worlds. One, the dancing girl, and the other, a spiritual monk, a priest, an awakened soul. So the tryst means a romantic meeting or a personal meeting, or in Hindi there's a word called Milan. So this poem is unusual because it is not talking about the meeting of bodies. It is talking about the meeting of soul. It is talking about a spiritual communion. It is talking about going beyond physical. So this poem can be studied at multiple layers, at multiple dimensions. So first, let us understand the poem line by line. So this is this was originally written in Bengali by Rabindranath Tagore, and this is uh, an edited version of that. Some of the lines are removed. So, so the question that might come in your exam is in this poem, how do we know that there is a meeting and what kind of meeting we are talking about? So they can ask you, comment on the title Abhisara. So we have to write about what is the meeting that Tagore is talking about. So before we analyze this, let us read the poem first. So Upagupta, the disciple of Buddha. So there are two principal characters in this poem. One is Upagupta, the monk, and another is the Vasadatta, the dancing girl. The kind of woman who used to dance in the court in those days. They were normally looked down upon. They were taboos in the society. They probably are still taboo in the society. So there are two principal characters. One, the disciple of Buddha. Now here, intentionally, Tagore probably is saying he is a disciple of Buddha because Buddha was a priest of different kind. Buddha did not believe in so-called God. Buddha even did not believe in so-called soul. Buddha was a practical spiritualist, I would probably use the word. In that sense that he was not spiritual, quote unquote, in the modern terminology. He was spiritual in a practical sense. And we have to keep in mind that Tagore himself was a person who never believed in idol worship and traditional religion. His parents and his family used to believe in the oneness of God. And they had their own religion. They used to believe in oneness with soul. So the very first line, Upagupta is a disciple of Buddha. The author, poet Tagore, is trying to differentiate that the person I am going to talk about is not the monk that you meet on the road. He is a Buddha's disciple. He is not the priest that you find in the marketplace. He is a special one. He is an enlightened one. And he does not believe in so-called rituals. He does not believe in so-called riti rivaj. He is a different kind of person. So Upagupta was lying asleep on the dust in the walls of Mathura. Now this place Mathura is always associated with Krishna. So with the word Mathura, the poet is trying to bring the image of Krishna and his communion with Radha and his blissful life. So this disciple was lying on the street. Now he is a disciple. He is not like modern YouTube enlightened person who come in Mercedes Benz. I have nothing against Mercedes Benz, but I'm trying to differentiate that he is a disciple who does not need to establish his superiority or authenticity or spiritual rootedness with a Mercedes Benz or coming in YouTube and making millions of followers. So he was a traditional kind of person who was lying on the street. Now, these great people, wherever they lie, they will be great, no matter where they are. Whether they are lying on the ground, sitting on the seat, or sitting on the throne, they will still be an enlightened being. See, the chief guest, wherever he will sit, he will still be a chief guest. So he's an enlightened being. So whether he's lying on the road or he is walking with the king doesn't make a difference. It might make a difference to the person who's watching it, but it makes no difference to him. So the day on which our poem begins, there is a enlightened being. I will use the word enlightened being. I will not use the word monk, because the moment I will use the word monk, you might associate it with the monk that you have seen, and thereby the whole poem will go haywire. So this enlightened being, who is a follower of Buddha, who is lying on the street of Mathura, which is a symbol of love, romance, enlightenment, bliss, joy, ecstasy. So lamps were all out. Matlab raat ho chuka tha and there was no candle. So it was a perfect meeting or perfect time for meeting between lovers. So doors were all shut and stars were all hidden by the murky sky of August. It was the month of August. There were clouds in the sky, so the stars were not visible. But andhera acha tha. So even if somebody does something wrong, there is no CCTV camera, there is no light, there is no way to monitor it. And as Bible says, when candles are out, even saints can become devil. But here is a special saint who will not become devil even when the focus is not there, even when nobody is watching. So Upagupta, the disciple of Buddha, was lying asleep in the streets of Mathura, and सब सितारे भी आसमान में नहीं चमक रहे थे. There was no stars twinkling in the sky. दिए बुझ चुके थे, अंधेरा कायम था. अगस्त का महीना था तो और खास करके अंधेरा था, बिकॉज आसमान में बादल थे. Those feet were tinkling with anklet touching his breast all of a sudden. So while he was sleeping on the road, suddenly a woman was passing by. एक लड़की वहां से जा रही थी, जिसके पैरों में पायल था. तो छम 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 करके वो जाने लगी. Of course not a ghost story. Touching his breast all of a sudden. So वो अपने जवानी के जोश में, and she was lost in her delirium of youth, being always eternally young and will never get old. So when people are young, they hardly imagine they can be old, right? They don't ever try the filter of Snapchatting and they look old. In Snapchat, there's a filter which can make you look old. I have not seen a single young man or a woman or a child, I mean teenager, who uses that old selfie pose, because in that they make you look bald, they make you look old, they make you look so ugly. But everybody uses those filters which makes them look much more beautiful than they actually are. But this is a young lady, and when you are young, you hardly think you will be old. When you are living, you hardly can actually perceive you are going to die. When you are healthy, you can hardly perceive that you are going to fall ill. So we can't blame वासुदत्ता फॉर बीइंग लॉस्ट इन द डिलेरियम ऑफ यूथ. वो अपने जवानी के नशे में थी, छमछम करके पायल से जा रही थी. अचानक सी नॉक दिस मैन, मतलब ये जो उपागुप्ता थे, द एनलाइटेंड पर्सन, रास्ते में सो रहे थे. सो दिस लेडी वाज गोइंग एंड शी नॉक दैट मैन. धक्का लगा उसके पैरों से. सो दिस लेडी नॉक दैट मैन एंड ही वोक अप, स्टार्टल, सरप्राइज होके उठे. एंड उस जमाने में जब ये पोएम था तब लाइट नहीं था. So this lady was carrying the lantern. Okay. So the lantern fell, the light fell on the face of that man. The man got up startled, the light fell on the man's face, but he still was forgiving, significant. He is not those priests who are anti-woman. He is not those so-called priests, those who comes in the TV and say women are untouchable. And these are not that kind of priests who think woman as a taboo, and after every 28 days they become unclean. This is not that kind of sadhu. He is an enlightened being. So when he saw that woman lost in her old world of dreams, excitement, happiness, joy, और उसके पैरों से धक्का लगा, तो इन्होंने माफ कर दिया. There are two characteristics of this man. One, even when he's lying on the streets of Mathura, he still is enlightened. Point number two, when somebody is knocking him, and that to a young girl, He has forgiving eyes. The priests that we know, most of them would get angry. I'm not saying all, mark my language. I'm saying most of them. Most of them would get angry. Some of them would say to the girl के तुमको मतलब तुम नाचने वाली औरत हो, how could you dare to kick me, or even so on and so forth. So वो लोग उसको उटपटांग बकते. लेकिन ये, of course, he is not a modern YouTuber turned priest or a priest turned YouTuber. He is an enlightened being. So even before the girl could say anything, he had those unconditional love for all forms of life, including this nachne wali Vasa Datta. So he could forgive that girl even before the girl could ask. It was Vasa Datta, the dancing girl. So जिस लड़की ने इस प्रीस्ट को धक्का मारा उसका नाम है वासा दत्ता. ये नाचने वाली लड़की है. और नाचने वाले को समाज नॉर्मली अच्छे नजरों से नहीं देखता. The people in society look down upon the nachne walis, the dancing girls are a taboo in society. They are a lesser being. They are not as holy as most people are. So she was stayed with jewel. मतलब वो ज्वेलरी चारों तरफ पहन के ऊपर से नीचे तक, जैसे वो इंस्टा में ज्वेलरी का ऐड होता है. She was wearing so many jewels. She was a dancing girl, that is a costume profession, so she was wearing the jewels. Clouded with a blue mantle. She was wearing a blue color dress, and she was from top to bottom, she was wearing those jewels. Drunk with the wine of her youth. यही लाइन हम बोल रहे थे. वो जवानी के नशे में थी, वो जोश में. जैसे ये सीन है ड्रंकर्ड, वो अपने ही नशे में होता है. कुत्ता को देख के बोलता है मेरा लश्कर है. He looks at the dog and says, ये मेरा बॉडीगार्ड है. He looks at the poster of Deepika and says, ये तो मेरी है. So drunkards are in their own world. But wine is not only a form of drinking. There are other forms of drinking. So this lady, this नाचने वाली, this dancing girl, was drunk in her youth. उसको अपने जवानी का नशा. She lowered her lamp. तो जब when she knocked down this man, इस लड़की ने enlightened being को धक्का मारा, धक्का लग गया. So वो अपने लैम्प लाइट से, लालटेन से, she looked into the man's face. The man's face was austerely beautiful. Beautiful means handsome in this case. Austerity means a very disciplined, spiritual person who believes in self-denial, a person who is not given to sensuous enjoyments of life, a person who is holy from within. And this holiness is giving an extraordinary glow on his face. Not Garnier glow, not facial glow, not spa on the hair and body. But this glow we are talking about comes from being holy from within, being good when even nobody is watching you. This is the austerity we are talking about, that is not seen on Instagram. This is seen when nobody is watching you. When somebody is watching, we all can be good. We all can be holy. We all can be spiritual. But even when nobody is watching, then to be good is really a challenge where most people fail. This man was austere. Matlab, austere means a person who believes in discipline, a person who believes in self-denial, a person who believes in ritualistic rooting of his life, a person अंदर से बहुत ही strict laws of life को मानता है. A धार्मिक, not that dharmic has very weird meaning nowadays. It probably means rituals, but when the word dharma was originally meant, it always meant one who follows righteousness. So ये एक अच्छे इंसान थे और अच्छा होने की वजह से इनके चेहरे पे एक स्पेशल ग्लो था. Not like our glow. हमारे ग्लो तो फेस वॉश कर करके आया है. इनका ग्लो अपने अंदर के फेस को पहचान के आया है. This is a different kind of glow where most people would not understand what glow we are talking about. So if you see this austere and beautiful normally are not used side by side, because dharmic khubsurti or dharmic normally in our modern connotations are opposite, because most people think the dharmic है वो क्या ही खूबसूरत होगा, जो खूबसूरत है उसको बाबा बनने का क्या. So this lady, when the man looked with his powerful spiritual eyes, forgiving, loving, kind, caring. The lady said to this enlightened being, "Forgive me, young ascetic." मतलब मुझे माफ कर दीजिए, young ascetic. That means Vasadatta and this enlightened being, they are of the same age. Keep this in mind. ये कोई 100 साल का बुड्ढा नहीं है. He is exactly the same age of this dancing girl. That's why there is a meeting. That's why the poem is called The Tryst Abhisara. That's why it's called romantic meeting. That's why it's called Milne ki Bela, Milan ki Bela in Hindi. So the woman is saying, "Forgive me, young enlightened man." And the lady is saying, "Graciously, means respectfully, please come to my house. This dusty earth, मतलब ये जमीन के लिए शोभा नहीं देता." So this lady is still not enlightened to understand that a spiritual man will be spiritual no matter whether he is lying on the road of Mathura or he is lying in a 5-star hotel suite room. It makes no difference to me. Now, whether I drink water in this plastic bottle or whether I drink it in a glass made of gold, makes no difference. Similarly, this lady can only see the outside manifestation of something. So she can understand कि एक बहुत अच्छे इंसान while will he lie on the road. So एक अच्छे इंसान कहीं भी हो सकते हैं. Whether this good man is on the road, the good man is lying in a bed, doesn't matter. Goodness does not depend on outside thing. It is the inner being which actually manifests. So this lady is not so enlightened. This lady is after a dancing girl. Like most dancing girls are, they are good human beings, but to become enlightened is altogether a different ball game. So she's saying, "आप मेरे घर आइए respectfully." Now a young girl is calling a young man to her house. A normal priest that we see on the road, that whom we see most of the time, would say कि ये क्या घोर पाप तुमने कर दिया, मुझ जैसे सन्यासी को अपने घर में बुलाती हो, उल्टन. But this ascetic, this enlightened being, is not a con man. He is a God man. He is not a pseudo spiritual. He is a real mystic. So when the girl is calling her in the middle of the night, and the darkness is there all around, कि मेरे घर में चलिए, he is not angry. He is not saying कि तुमने मेरा धर्म भ्रष्ट कर दिया by touching me. हमको पाप लगेगा, हमको 40 साल का तपस्या करना पड़ेगा. He is a Buddha's disciple. Mark you that. So the very first line is important. Okay, Buddha is a practical spiritualist. I told you, he doesn't believe in all these rituals that we normally associate monks with. So this man was really enlightened. So when the girl has touched her, when the girl is saying in the middle of the night, "Come to me in my room," he is not taking it in the other way. He is not offended. He accepts the invitation. So, and he is not angry. And he is not saying कि तुमको जन्म जन्म का पाप लगेगा. The dusty earth is not fit for you. The young ascetic answered, "Woman, go away. When the time will come, I will come." So ye priest, I mean enlightened being, sorry to use the word priest. So ye enlightened being, awakened soul, उस लड़की से बोल रहे जाओ, वक्त आएगा तो आएंगे. He is not anti-life. He is not rejecting. He is accepting. But for everything according to him, there is a time. Probably he was a real seer, S-W-E-R. Seer is one who can see future. Seer is one mystic who can understand what is going to happen. So he understood. Okay, there will be a time when we will meet. Probably through his spiritual power, he could see this. So he said, "Abhi jao, time aayega, I'll come." He is not saying, "How could you call me the priest or sorry, an awakened soul?" The moment this happened, the moment this awakened soul said, "I'll come to you," suddenly the night became dark. अचानक बहुत ज्यादा अंधेरा हो गया. And the night shows its teeth in the flashing of light. मतलब ऐसा लग रहा था आसमान में कहते हैं दांत दिखा रहा. Thunder lightning is compared to the teeth of the night. Suddenly there was thunder and lightning. If there was a movie, now is a time for the BGM to come up. Now is the time for all kinds of thunder and lightning in the sky. The storm was growing from the corner of the sky. आसमान के चारों तरफ से बादल गरजने लगा, थंडर लाइटनिंग होने लगा. वुमेन अचानक कांप गई. मतलब ये कांपना तो हो सकता है कि it is because of thunder and lightning, and it can also mean that this lady understood that calling a spiritual being for unspiritual purpose probably was not appropriate. Maybe she understood a mistake. Maybe she became at least a micromillimeter enlightened in that moment. So she could shake in fear. A year had. So ये सब हो गया. ये एक पर्टिकुलर नाइट का डिस्क्रिप्शन. अगर वासुदेव का नॉक डेट मतलब गलती से पैर लग गया, वो रिलीजियस स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिकल स्पिरिचुअलिस्ट को, एन अवेकेंड बीइंग को. सो लड़की बोली कि सर आप प्लीज हमारे घर चलिए अभी. दिस इज नॉट द प्लेस फॉर यू. यू विल डाई रेस्पेक्टफुली इन माय होम. So the man, the awakened being said, I will come to you when the time is up. So ये सब हो गया. उसके अभी 1 साल नहीं हुआ था, फिर the scene shifts to a different scene. It was evening of a day in April. मतलब तुम्हारे मौसम की बेला ये मौसम रास रचाने. This is a moment of celebration because it's a time of spring. It's a time where soul meets. It's a time where lovers meet. It is a time where you there is a communion with soul. मतलब ये मौसम रास रचाने का. It's a time for Abhisara. It's a time for tryst. It's a time for meeting of soul. So मौसम बाहर के थे. स्प्रिंग का मौसम था, अप्रैल का महीना था. The branches of the sides are blooming, blossoming. So सारे फूल खिले थे. Gay notes of flute, मतलब चारों तरफ फ्लूट बज रहा था. कृष्णा की बांसुरी, मथुरा है, was flowing all around, far and near. स्प्रिंग का खुशहाली और कृष्णा की मधुमस्त बांसुरी चारों तरफ फैल रहा था. Citizen had gone to it for some festival. So सारे लोग जंगल में कोई फ्लावर फेस्टिवल है वहां चले. So after almost a year or within a year, ये फिर से एक स्प्रिंग का सीन है जहां बांसुरी और सिर्फ बज रहा है, खुशहाल माहौल है, और मैक्सिमम लोग चले गए हैं वहां जंगल में to do the festival of flowers. From the mid sky gaze the moon. और चांदनी रात है आज. पहले रात के तरह, अगस्त रात के तरह डार्क नहीं. आज स्टार दिख रहा है, मून लाइट है. On the shadows of the silent town. So yes, towns are silent because most people have gone to the forest for the flower festival. So ये सन्नाटा वाला town है. ये enlightened being was walking in the lonely street. So आज ये lonely street में चल रहे थे. और आपको पता चलेगा ये lonely street इसलिए भी है in the next few lines. While this priest, or sorry, while this awakened man, the awakened soul, was walking through the street, over him were poets singing love songs, uttering, where they were showing the painless complaint, sleepless plain. And they were complaining because they could not sleep. This one was trying to meet the other. One lover was trying to meet the other lover. So जहां से ये priest चल के जा रहा था, उसके ऊपर ये चारों तरफ मस्त नजारे थे. आसमान में तारे टिमटिमा रहे थे. अंधेरा कहीं भी नहीं था, उजाला था. और कृष्णा के बांसुरी जैसा बांसुरी चारों तरफ बज रहा था. और ऊपर में कोयल लोग कुहू कुहू करके they were complaining of the love sleepless night because they could not meet the lover. ऐसे ही रोमांटिक माहौल में it is enlightened man called Upa Gupta, the disciple of Buddha, was passing through the city gate. शहर में पहले दरवाजा होता था, तो ये दरवाजा के पास गए and stood at the rampant. Rampant मतलब होता है एक चौखट जैसा होता है. पहले जमाने में दरवाजा जहाँ बंद होता था वहाँ एक पिलर जैसा होता था. So when this enlightened being went to the door of this street Mathura after almost few months before a year, the moonlight was shining, the stars were there in the sky, the atmosphere was very romantic. कोयल कुहू कुहू कर रही थी। और ठीक ऐसे ही रोमांटिक माहौल में जब ये एनलाइटेंड बीइंग मथुरा के दरवाजे के चौखट पे पहुंचे, मथुरा शहर के, तो क्या देखा उन्होंने? द सेम वुमन, द डांसिंग गर्ल, वासदत्ता, was lying on the street with a mangrove grove। मतलब वहाँ एक मैंगो का फॉरेस्ट था, वहां वो जमीन में सोई हुई है। ये वही लड़की है who is saying to the priest, or who said to the priest, don't lie here, but she is lying now there। And this is the same dancing girl who was a center of attraction। So many people went to her to see the dancing। इतने सारे रंगीन रात इसने रचाए थे। It entertained so many people, but now the same woman who is suffering from some contagious disease in those days, like something of corona, kind of corona, she has been driven away from the town to avoid the poisonous contagion। वो यहाँ उसको लाके छोड़ दिया गया है ताकि उसको कोई जो डिजीज हो गया जो भी, वो दूसरे को ना हो, बिकॉज सी सफरिंग फ्रॉम ए contagion जो कॉन्टैक्ट में बढ़ता है, जैसे कोरोना बढ़ता है। Now this lady who has been giving pleasure to everybody, when she has become pain, the same society, the same people have thrown her outside the city gate। I've read in some magazines that there are places in Odisha where dancing girls are not given funeral, whether from any religion they are not given the last rites। When they die, they are thrown away into the bhagar, they are thrown away into the dustbin। There's a big dustbin there. So they are thrown, and family member, they tie the dead body, okay, and they, with a rope, and they drag the dead body and throw it into the big dustbin। So this happens because some priests believe कि अगर उनका नमाज जनाजा नहीं पढ़ाया जा सकता है, some believe, I'm not saying all, mark my language, some believe that this all kinds of loose character women, नाचने गाने वाली prostitute type, उनका funeral वो लोग नहीं करते। So उनको ऐसे छोड़ दिया था। I'm not saying everywhere, I'm not saying all over the world, I'm saying some parts in Orissa। So here is the same ideology। ये लड़की को कुछ हो गया है, कोई बीमारी हो गई। So जो लोगों को रात को रंगीन करती थी, she used to make people's life colorful with her dance, with her song, with her entertainment, and so many things। But the same lady, when she is of no value, this selfish society has sucked the enjoyment out of life and has thrown her into the dustbin to die। But here comes the meeting of two divine souls, of, of, of a real spiritual love, a love that is very difficult for most of us to understand, because this is not the 90s movies, this is not हम आपके हैं कौन, this is not like the Vivaha movie, this is much beyond। Actually, this is a poem where this man will now clean her wounds। This man will now make her again smile, and then she will survive। So Vasadatta was lying on the ground and she was about to die। Now, this is a contagious disease, and we have seen during the days of Corona that if anybody comes in the contact with the person who is suffering from a deadly disease, he or she might die। So this enlightened soul knew that he might die or he will die। In spite of knowing that he will die, he was still helping this woman। This is a pure love, a love in which you are not asking for anything, you are just giving for the sake of giving। So here is a real Abhisara, a real romantic meeting, because a real love is not bothered about what it gets. Like this light that is falling on me is not bothered about what it gets in return. The moonlight, the sunlight, the rainfall does not care who is the recipient of it। So here is an example of an extreme spiritual love which is beyond most people to understand. This man, enlightened man, is helping a prostitute, a dancing girl who is suffering from pestilence. मतलब उसके बदन में घाव हो चुका, वो मरने वाली, इसको देख के घिन आएगा. But he is still there to help. So the woman lay at the feet in the shadow of the groove, and this man was still helping her. And so this man, what he did was, I'm reading it from the book. So this man helped the lady. How? So these are the last few lines. The ascetic lay. So the priest now was beside her. He took her head in the knees. इसने उस लड़की के अपने उसके सर को अपनी गोद में रखा. Moistened her lips, मतलब वो इतने दिन से भूखी प्यासी थी कि उसके lips सूख चुके थे. So this man gave some water to them. दुनिया, मतलब दुनिया में कोई उसे पानी पिलाने तक के लिए. And then उसके बॉडी में जो घाव हुआ था, जो भी बीमारी हुआ था, this man, this enlightened being, smeared on her body with दवा जो भी उस जमाने का था वो लगा दी. So this lady is now on her deathbed. उसने रात के अंधेरे में किसको देखा था कब 1 साल पहले से, all forgotten about. It's a dark night, and she can only see through visual eyes, not through spiritual. So this lady is asking, "Who are you, merciful one?" बोली, तुम इतने काइंड हो क्योंकि दुनिया ने मुझे ठुकरा दिया, यहाँ मरने के लिए सामने छोड़ दिया, तुम हो कौन? So this enlightened being is saying, the time at last has come. मतलब वो वक्त आ गया था ना, तुमने मुझे बुलाया था. I have come. Man of promise, commitment. I am here, Vasadatta, replied the young ascetic. So the young man said to that lady that I have come. Maybe this man will die. Maybe both of them will die. Because in those days, there was no antigen, there was no antibody, and so many things that we talk about. So most people used to die out of any kind of cholera, dysentery, or this. Even cholera at time was life-threatening disease. No, it's not. Corona is also not, but once upon a time it was. So TB was once upon a time a life-threatening disease. So this man put a lady in her lap, gave her water, he moistened her lips, gave her water, gave her अपने हाथों से उसके घाव में मरहम पट्टी किया, दवा लगा. Now, the moment you see somebody from contagious disease, most people would not be able to touch it because they're afraid that अगर वो बीमारी मुझे भी हो गया तो I will also die. This man was a real spiritualist. He might die, but so what? Everybody dies. The tragedy of life is not death. The tragedy of life is if love dies within us. So he did not want the love that he has for all forms of life, including this dancing girl, to die. So he was a real priest. Even probably he has to die. But जान देने के बाद भी, he was doing what a real enlightened being is supposed to help people. So here is a meeting, here is an Abhisara, here is a romantic meeting. So now they will meet maybe in the next world, not in the form of body, but in the form of soul. And soul is a very complex concept for most people to understand. SOUL, soul I'm talking about. So this poem is a romantic poem about an unusual love story. Of course, when I say love, I'm not talking about physical, bodily, sensuous love. I'm talking about spiritual love. I'm talking about cosmic sense of love. I'm talking about going beyond body kind of love. I'm talking about love which Tagore talks in most of his stories, poems, and most of his novels. So, Abhisara means a romantic meeting. So, it's a meeting about two souls into different contradictory positions. One enlightened being, another ek nachne wali, but still can love happen. Love can happen in any form, in any place, in any kind of religion, in any kind of nachne wali. We are not talking about marriage. We are not talking about settling down. We are talking about celebration of that unity, of that cosmic sense that is in every one of us. So let me end this by saying, the moment we realize that whom we love is not significant, that is the first day we start loving. Let me repeat it. When this man, the priest, or the enlightened being, or in your language, ascetic or monk, whatever you call it, he is no more concerned about whom is he helping, a prostitute, a dying girl, a Muslim, a Wahhabi, Chinese, a Japanese, a girl, a prostitute. This is the day when someone becomes spiritual. When you are no more concerned about who is the recipient of love. So here is an enlightened being who helps even a prostitute, who helps even a dancing girl, even by giving his own life. So Abhisara is a meeting of two souls, and as the bhajan goes, तुम्हारे दर्शन की बेला ये मौसम रास रचा. So this is the time for meeting of souls. It's a time to celebrate. तुम्हारे दर्शन की बेला. Now this soul will see the soul of other. So तुम्हारे दर्शन की बेला. It's a time for meeting the soul. So ये मौसम रास रचा. So that's why in the poem, poets were singing. That's why in the poem the stars were twinkling. So मौसम रास रचा. Because two souls will meet. I do understand that it's very difficult for most people to understand this kind of spiritual context, but this is what the syllabus is. Thank you for watching the video, and if this video has been of any meaning to you, I request you to share it with the people who might get some benefit out of it. Thank you.